So it's time for an insight into how we make the news here at BBC Radio Nottingham. It's Sunday morning and I'm on duty, going into the studio for the first time. Look, mics are always recordable, even if the faders are down. You've got to be quite careful. Now, this morning's programme is actually coming from Derby. It's a shared regional programme at the weekends, which is what we do these days. So, in fact, I'm the only person here. But it's my responsibility to put together the news for BBC Radio Nottingham. It's a bespoke bulletin for our patch. And in front of me is Mission Control. In the centre, we have the most important thing, the microphone that gets me on air. Behind that, there is a clock, which tells me, well, what time it is. And these wiggly meters tell me what levels we are outputting at. And they should be peaking at just under the red there, which they are. To the left of me, we have our digital desk. Now, this is where all the audio comes from. So if I'm playing out a clip, a soundbite, a jingle, anything like that, it comes from this bit of the computer. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we've got the names of all of the bits of audio. And on the right-hand side, we have the scripts that go with it. So I read off this screen directly, which can be quite fun. Over here, we've got the transmission screen. Now, this does really important stuff. If I am about to do the bulletin, I'll put Studio 2 on air onto our transmitters. We'll show you that a bit later. But at the moment, you can see the transmitters are playing out Sustain. That's the sustaining programme, which in this case comes from Derby. You can see that in the little panel there. So the first thing we're going to do this morning is not read the news live. We're actually going to record a bulletin for our smart speakers. But before we do any of that recording, we've got to start here in the newsroom where we put our bulletins together. This is the system known as Open Media, and down here you can see that we've got Sunday's running orders in front of us. On the left-hand side of the screen, we've got what we call the overnights. These are all the stories that have been written for me to run on Sunday. And on the right-hand side, we have the script for our smart speaker bulletin. Let's click inside and see what's in it. So the smart speaker needs to be about 3 stories, 2 of them that have got audio in, and you can see which ones I've selected here. Now, the important thing about the smart speaker bulletin is that it has to be all local stories. We're not allowed to put national and international stuff in because that lives elsewhere in smart speaker products. And you can see that the smart speaker bulletin is now loaded and ready to go in the running order. What I now need to do is go back over here to the control panel and go to what we call the auto recorders. This records stuff at any time from our studios. I'm in Studio 2 today, so I'm just going to start recording there. And I'm going to put my phone over here so that you can see what I do next to record the bulletin. So I'm sitting now in front of the transmission desk. We're not on air, we are in recording mode. Just making sure that the sustain program is still going out. Yes, it is. I'm going to check my microphone levels. And now we're going to read the smart speaker bulletin like this.
BBC Radio Nottingham.
Update.
Hello, I'm Kevin Stanley. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has been in North Nottinghamshire on the election campaign trail. He visited Bassetlaw Hospital in a constituency that currently has a Conservative majority of 14,000. Sir Keir admits there is work to do if his party is to win back so-called Red Wall seats.
We did lose badly in 2019. We have spent 4.5 years now changing the Labour Party, which was a plan for wealth creation, for growth, and making sure that living standards improve here in the East Midlands, that we have the jobs of the future, and that we are properly supporting our public services, including, of course, our NHS.
Campaigners have welcomed a new law brought in this week requiring all pet cats to be microchipped. East Midlands Advocate says it's one of a series of measures that can demonstrate responsible pet ownership, especially for people living in private rented housing. And a special tribute is taking place at Nottingham's Broadway Cinema today, celebrating the life of poet Benjamin Zephaniah, who died last year. There'll be readings from his work and 3 short films that feature his poems. It's been put together by Ben Wigley, who first met Benjamin when making a film about Paul Smith.
He called me out of the blue when I was cycling home just to tell me that he didn't have time, but we talked for a long time about allotments and the film idea, and by the end of the call he was convinced to do it. He watched the film and thought about it and wrote specific poems to the films, so he spent a lot of time doing that for us, so it was amazing.
Ben Wigley on Benjamin Zephaniah. And that's your latest BBC News for Nottingham. So that's the recording finished. And what we're going to do now is to stop recording over here. We now have to actually edit what we've just done. So I'm going to go into the audio database. That's the bit that we've just recorded at the top. And I'm going to bring this into our editing database here, or our editing function. You can see the blank at the beginning before the bulletin starts, and there it is. Hopefully, all I have to do is what we call topping and tailing. That's chopping off the beginning where the silence is, and chopping off the silence at the end. There it goes. And hopefully, that should give us a nice smart speaker bulletin over here.
BBC Radio Nottingham.
Update.
Hello, I'm Kevin Stanley. The Labour leader, Sir Keir... There it is, that's absolutely marvellous. Now, what I'm going to do is save this to the database. And we export it to audio to voice bulletins. And once I upload it there, it goes out onto your smart speaker. Isn't that clever? So those are the headlines and the smart speakers. It is now 6:56. What we're going to do now is prepare for the 7 o'clock news. To do so, we bring up the programme on the loudspeakers. And we're into the final record of the hour, which sounds like ace. How long has this been going on? Well, about an hour so far. The other thing I'm going to do down here is to put the split jingles back on. This is important because if I don't do it, I won't hear the jingle go out at the top of the hour. And the final thing we have to do before we go live with the 7 o'clock news is actually make this studio live. So I'm going to do that now. Studio 2 to all streams, enable and take. And now Studio 2 is live. We're on air. So anything I say from here, from this point forward, will go out on the radio. So we're just going to tap in the time of the news bulletin, 7 o'clock. And it's ready to go. So all we've got to do now is wait for the news jingle to play, and we're away. So here we are, we're just about to come up to the 7 o'clock news, live on BBC Radio Nottingham. Breaking into the programme that's coming from Derby. Stand by.
It's Ace and How Long on the Sunday Breakfast Show. Trending on the way, taking a look at those big stories, including one involving the man that I would just love to marry. And he's gone all green-fingered after the news.
On the BBC Sounds app, on your smart speaker,
Play BBC Radio Nottingham.
and on your radio.
The sound of Nottinghamshire is
BBC Radio Nottingham.
At 7 with the latest for Nottinghamshire. Good morning, I'm Kevin Stanley. England play their opening match of Euro 2024 tonight. They face Serbia in the German city of Gelsenkirchen. For Gareth Southgate, it's his fourth tournament, both as player and manager.
To be able to go into a major tournament as manager of your country is a massive honour. So, we've done most of our preparation by this point. Of course, there are little bits and pieces that you're still working through, but the players are ready, and we trust them to go and play.
The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has been in North Nottinghamshire on the election campaign trail. He visited Bassetlaw Hospital in a constituency that currently has a Conservative majority of 14,000. Sir Keir admits there's work to do if his party is to win back so-called red wall seats.
We did lose badly in 2019. We have spent 4.5 years now changing the Labour Party, which was a plan for wealth creation, for growth, and making sure that living standards improve here in the East Midlands, that we have the jobs of the future, and that we are properly supporting our public services, including, of course, our NHS.
Well, there are 5 candidates standing in Bassetlaw. The full list is at the BBC News website. Meanwhile, a new report has criticised the NHS funding pledges made by the main parties. Analysis by the think tank the Nuffield Trust suggests the health service will face its tightest spending period in 40 years if either the Tories or Labour win the election. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has vowed to continue the war against Hamas after 8 soldiers were killed in an operation in southern Gaza. They've been returning from an overnight operation in Rafah in which dozens of Palestinians are reported to have been killed. A special tribute is taking place at Nottingham's Broadway Cinema today, celebrating the poet Benjamin Zephaniah, who died last year. There'll be readings from his work and 3 short films that feature his poetry. It's been put together by Ben Wigley, who first met Benjamin when making a film about Paul Smith.
He called me out of the blue when I was cycling home just to tell me that he didn't have time. But we talked for a long time about allotments and the film idea. And by the end of the call, he was convinced to do it. He watched the film and thought about it and wrote specific poems to the films. So he spent a lot of time doing that for us. So it was amazing.
In your sport, England are through to the T20 Cricket World Cup Super 8 stage after Australia battle past Scotland in St Lucia. A win by Scotland would have knocked out England, the defending champions. Notts Outlaws' match against Durham yesterday was cut short because of the rain, leaving them still bottom of the group. And it's finals day at the Nottingham Tennis Open, but they've still to complete the semis first. Emma Raducanu is a set-up against Katie Bolter, while Karolina Pliskova has yet to begin her semi-final against Diane Parry. And your weather variable cloud today with sunshine and showers, highs of 18 Celsius. Dry tonight with clearing skies, lows of 8. For an update anytime, you can ask your smart speaker to play BBC News for Nottingham.
The sound of Nottinghamshire.
So that is the news. That's the news done. But what we need to do now is to complete our checks and put the programme back on air. And we do that by taking our Sustain programme from Derby to all streams Enable and Take. And Sustain is now back on the air, which means I can safely leave the studio and get ready for the next bulletin.